Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're drifting into a quieter side of history, one that never announced itself with wars or crowns, but reshaped human life in far subtler ways. This is a journey through things that once frightened us simply because they made life easier. Objects that were mocked, rejected, even destroyed, not because they failed, but because they worked too well. From medieval tools condemned as sinful comforts, to a teenage girl who imagined a monster during a summer that never came, to a palace built for fear that slowly became a home for beauty, and finally, to a material born from fire and sand that taught humanity how to see the world without touching it. These are stories of inventions and ideas that didn't conquer the past loudly, but survived by waiting, by softening resistance, by becoming ordinary. Stories about how humans slowly learn to live with comfort, clarity, and rest without losing meaning. So, before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let the noise of the modern world fade, and allow history to speak softly tonight.
Before we speak of objects, inventions, or failures, allow your mind to loosen its grip on the present. Let the sharp edges of modern life soften. Imagine, instead, a thick-walled stone chamber in the 11th century, where night presses close against the windows and the cold seeps slowly through every crack. The air smells faintly of smoke and damp earth. A small fire murmurs in the hearth, not to comfort, but merely to survive. In this world, comfort is not an ambition, it is a question mark. In medieval Europe, life was understood as something already perfectly arranged by a higher power. The ground was hard because it was meant to keep the body humble. Clothing was coarse because it reminded the soul of discipline. Hunger, cold, and physical strain were not problems to be solved, but conditions to be endured. To ease them too eagerly was to risk misunderstanding one's place in the divine order. Suspicion followed anything that promised to make life softer. A tool that reduced effort did not look like progress, it looked like temptation. Medieval minds did not ask whether something worked, they asked whether it should exist at all. Convenience was unsettling because it hinted that human hands were trying to correct what God had already declared sufficient. This is the quiet tension that shaped medieval daily life. A world where endurance was admired more than relief, and suffering carried meaning. To be uncomfortable was to be honest. To be at ease was to invite judgment. In monasteries, physical hardship was a pathway to clarity. In villages, shared discomfort created order. No one expected to be alone, to be cushioned, or to be spared inconvenience. Privacy was rare. Softness was suspicious, and any object that tried to intervene between the body and the rawness of life drew quiet scrutiny. This mindset explains why so many medieval innovations were not rejected loudly, but resisted silently. They were not burned or banned at first, they were simply ignored, mocked, or wrapped in moral doubt. A new object might appear briefly, used by outsiders, travelers, or the wealthy, then disappear again into rumor, not because it failed mechanically, but because it failed spiritually. Because it made things easier, and easier felt wrong. Tonight, as your breathing slows, this is the world we are stepping into. A world that believed struggle was proof of virtue, and that comfort weakened the soul. The stories in this chapter are not about stupidity or ignorance, they are about fear. Fear that convenience would erode discipline. Fear that small comforts would lead to moral softness. Fear that once life became easier, people would forget how to endure. The medieval world did not distrust technology because it was new, it distrusted it because it questioned suffering itself. And yet, quietly, patiently, some of these objects survived, not by convincing society, but by waiting. Waiting until daily life changed just enough that suspicion loosened its grip. Waiting until need whispered louder than doctrine. You are using some of these objects today without a second thought. They sit in your kitchen, rest on your body, support your back. They won their place not through triumph, but through persistence, through silence. And as you rest now, drifting further from the present, remember this gentle truth from history. Progress does not always arrive as a revolution. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a failure, waiting centuries for permission to exist.
The story begins not with a tool, but with a moment of stillness. A banquet hall in Venice, lit by trembling candlelight, where stone walls hold the warmth of many bodies gathered close together. Heavy robes brush the floor. Fingers reach toward platters of meat and fruit, tearing, dipping, sharing without hesitation. This is how meals have always been eaten. Hands are honest. Hands remind everyone that food is labor, and eating is survival. Then she enters, a Byzantine princess, raised in a court where refinement has slowly learned to coexist with faith. Her movements are calm, deliberate. She does not reach for the food with her fingers. Instead, she draws from her sleeve a small object made of gold, slender and unfamiliar, ending in two narrow prongs. A fork. For a moment, the room forgets how to breathe. It is not the object itself that unsettles them, but what it represents: distance, separation. The fork places a thin barrier between the body and the meal. It refuses direct contact. To modern eyes, this is elegance. To medieval sensibilities, it feels like defiance. The whispers begin quietly. Why would someone refuse the touch God designed? Why replace living fingers with cold metal? The concern is not hygiene, it is morality. St. Peter Damian would later write with clear disapproval, questioning why anyone would reject the natural tools given by God in favor of something artificial. To him and many others, the fork is not progress, it is arrogance disguised as civility. It suggests that the human body is insufficient as it is, and that idea is dangerous. The princess does not argue. She eats quietly, gracefully, unaware that her simple action has marked her. When she dies young, taken by illness far from home, the story changes shape. Her death is no longer just tragedy. It becomes a lesson, a warning whispered among the faithful. They say her refined habits invited divine punishment, that the fork, too clean, too distant, offended the natural order. And so the fork is judged, not in court, not by decree, but by silence. It disappears from public life, not because it failed to work, but because it worked too well, because it challenged a belief deeply rooted in medieval life, that suffering and messiness were signs of humility, and that ease was suspicious. The fork becomes a symbol of excess, associated with foreign courts, luxury, and moral decay. Yet, quietly, it survives. In merchant homes, in private kitchens, in places where practicality whispers louder than doctrine.
as trade expands, as sauces thicken, as pasta winds its way into European meals, fingers begin to falter, food slips, hands burn. And slowly, without sermons or declarations, the fork returns, not triumphantly, patiently, one table at a time, one generation at a time. By the time resistance fades, no one remembers the outrage. The fork has become invisible, ordinary, necessary. Tonight, if you think of the fork resting in your drawer, remember that it was once considered dangerous, not because it harmed the body, but because it threatened an idea. The idea that life should be hard, that comfort should be earned through endurance, not designed into existence. The fork did not defeat medieval suspicion by force. It waited until daily life itself demanded relief. And that is how many failures win.
Time in the medieval world does not move quickly. It settles, it layers, it repeats itself until change no longer feels like change at all. And this is how failed ideas survive, not by convincing anyone they are right, but by waiting until resistance grows tired. The fork did not return to the table with announcements or apologies. It returned quietly, in rooms where no one was watching closely, in the kitchens of merchants where practicality mattered more than appearances, in homes where trade had introduced new foods, heavier sauces, softer breads, and meals that no longer obeyed the old logic of eating by hand. Fingers, once reliable, became clumsy. Grease slipped through skin. Heat burned where metal would not. And slowly, almost reluctantly, people reached for tools again, not because they trusted them, but because they needed them. This is the moment history rarely records, the moment when ideology gives way to habit, when suspicion loosens not through debate, but through repetition. One dinner passes without incident, then another. The fork no longer feels foreign. Its weight becomes familiar. Its sound, a soft metallic tap against ceramic, begins to blend into the rhythm of daily life. No one announces acceptance. There is no reversal of moral judgment. There is simply silence, and silence is powerful. Over decades, then centuries, the fork moves outward, from Italian kitchens to French courts, from French courts to English households. Each step is small enough to avoid attention. Each adoption is framed as practicality, never as comfort. That distinction matters deeply in medieval thinking. Comfort is indulgence. Practicality is survival. The fork survives because it learns to disguise itself as necessity, and in doing so, it teaches us something important about human resistance to ease. People do not reject convenience forever. They reject it until inconvenience becomes unbearable. Only then does relief feel permitted. This pattern repeats across history. Innovations that promise ease are often treated as moral threats before they are accepted as neutral tools. The fork is simply one of the earliest examples we still hold in our hands. Listen now, in your imagination, to the soft, steady sound of metal touching plate. A small, regular sound, almost hypnotic. That sound represents centuries of hesitation finally giving way, not to pleasure, but to function. And once function is accepted, comfort quietly follows. By the time the fork becomes common, its story is already forgotten. Children grow up never questioning it. They do not know it was once cursed, once feared, once blamed for divine punishment. It has become invisible, which is the final stage of acceptance. True victory in history is not remembrance, it is normality. The fork wins by becoming unremarkable.
And as you drift further into rest, consider how many objects around you have followed the same path. Things once doubted, once mocked, now essential. Not because they were proven morally right, but because life slowly reshaped itself around them. The medieval world did not change its beliefs overnight. It softened them quietly until belief bent to reality. And reality, when faced with daily friction, always asks the same gentle question: why suffer more than necessary? The answer rarely comes as a declaration. It comes as a habit, a sound, a small motion repeated until resistance fades. And that is how failed ideas return, silently.
If the fork challenged how people ate, buttons challenged something even more intimate: how the body was held together in public. Imagine medieval clothing not as tailored garments, but as layered fabrics, wrapped, tied, and fastened with cords. Clothing was not meant to follow the body closely. It concealed rather than shaped. To adjust it precisely was unnecessary, perhaps even vain. Buttons existed long before they were useful, but for centuries they were treated as ornaments rather than solutions. Small decorative spheres sewn onto robes, catching the light, signaling status, not function. The idea of cutting holes into fabric to make clothing fit more closely seemed almost irresponsible. Why weaken the cloth? Why complicate something that already worked? Laces and ties demanded patience. They took time. And time spent dressing was time spent practicing discipline. Ease was suspicious. A button promised speed. Speed felt careless. Medieval thinking often equated effort with virtue. If something could be done more quickly, it was assumed something meaningful had been lost. To dress slowly was to respect the body's place in order. To dress easily was to risk indulgence. Buttons therefore lingered in a strange limbo, present, admired, but not trusted. They decorated sleeves and collars without serving purpose. They existed as symbols of craftsmanship, not convenience. And so they were labeled, quietly, as useless. Not because they lacked potential, but because society did not yet need what they offered. Then fashion changed, very slowly. As tailoring improved and garments began to follow the shape of the body more closely, old fastening methods began to fail. Ties loosened, fabric shifted. Movement demanded structure, and structure demanded something new. The button returned, not as a luxury, but as a solution. A small, repeatable mechanism that allowed fabric to open and close without surrendering control. Still, acceptance was reluctant. Early buttoned garments were seen as foreign, experimental, even indulgent. But once again, necessity softened resistance. Soldiers needed clothing that stayed in place. Workers needed garments that did not tangle. Everyday life quietly voted in favor of function. Buttons did not announce themselves as progress, they simply worked. Over time, their presence became invisible. Today, you fasten buttons without thought, without moral judgment. You do not feel disciplined or indulgent when you close your shirt. The struggle that once surrounded this tiny object has dissolved into habit. Buttons won not because they were beautiful, but because they respected the body's need for order without demanding suffering. They reduced friction, not effort, and that distinction mattered. In medieval life, effort was sacred, friction was not. Buttons removed friction, and so, slowly, they were forgiven. As you rest now, imagine the gentle sound of fabric brushing, the soft click as a button slides into place. A simple action repeated millions of times across centuries. Each repetition a quiet agreement between the body and the world.
that comfort, when small enough, can be allowed, that not all ease leads to weakness, and that sometimes the most stubborn resistance dissolves not through argument, but through repetition.
Now, allow your attention to settle on your body, the place where it rests, the surface supporting you without effort. In the medieval world, this simple experience was rare. Seating was communal. Long wooden benches lined walls and tables, pressing bodies together shoulder to shoulder. There was warmth and proximity, but no boundary, no expectation of personal space. To sit was not to relax, but to endure in place. Chairs with backs existed, but they were symbols, not comforts. Reserved for kings, bishops, and lords, they elevated one body above others, not to ease it, but to display authority. The idea that an ordinary person might deserve a seat shaped to the spine would have seemed absurd. Comfort implied value, and value in medieval thinking was not distributed evenly. Privacy followed the same logic. Sleep was shared, rooms were shared, lives unfolded in full view of others. Solitude was not a right, it was a privilege. To seek separation was to risk suspicion. Why withdraw unless you had something to hide? The body belonged to the order of the household, the village, the church. To carve out personal comfort was to challenge that order. And so furniture remained rigid, spaces remained open. The chair, like the fork and the button, waited. It waited for a shift not in craftsmanship, but in belief. Over time, as homes changed, as rooms multiplied, as ideas of the self slowly emerged, the chair began to transform. It gained a back, then arms, then cushioning. Each addition was small enough to avoid scandal, each improvement justified as practicality. A back to prevent fatigue, arms to steady the body, padding to preserve strength, never comfort for comfort's sake, always necessity. And in this careful framing, resistance softened. People discovered something quietly revolutionary. When the body is supported, the mind rests more easily. When rest becomes possible, thought deepens. Privacy followed. Curtains, doors, beds set apart. The world did not declare these changes virtuous, it simply absorbed them. Today, you sit or lie alone without guilt. You expect space, you expect softness. These expectations feel natural, but they are the result of centuries of negotiation between suspicion and need. The chair did not overthrow medieval values, it adapted around them. It allowed comfort to enter disguised as care. And now, as rain begins to fall softly in your imagination, tapping against distant stone, let your body sink into the support beneath you. This is not indulgence, it is inheritance, a legacy of small victories won quietly by objects that refuse to disappear. The fork, the button, the chair, each was once doubted, each was accused of weakening the human spirit, and each in time proved that easing the body does not erase strength, it preserves it. The medieval world feared comfort because it feared forgetting how to endure. But endurance does not vanish when relief arrives, it simply becomes gentler. As your breathing slows, remember this final truth from the chapter. History does not move from hardship to softness in a straight line. It circles, it hesitates, it returns, and sometimes it allows us to rest. Let your shoulders loosen. Let the weight beneath you hold what you no longer need to carry. The world will continue without your effort for a while, and that too is a quiet invention worth accepting. It began with a year that seemed to forget warmth. In 1816, the skies over Europe turned heavy and gray, as if the sun itself had withdrawn in quiet suspicion of the world below. Ash from a distant volcanic eruption drifted through the atmosphere, dulling the light, cooling the air, and unsettling the rhythms people trusted without question. Crops failed. Rain fell endlessly. Summer never truly arrived. For many, it felt like punishment without explanation. For others, it became a kind of enclosure. And it was inside one such enclosure, beside the dark waters of Lake Geneva, that a young woman named Mary Shelley began to listen inward. She was not yet famous. She was not yet certain of her place in the world. She was surrounded by towering intellects, men whose voices filled rooms with certainty and confidence, and yet she was quiet, watchful, absorbing. The villa they stayed in, Villa Diodati, became a shelter from the rain, but also a pressure chamber for the mind. Confined indoors by relentless storms, the group read aloud, debated science, philosophy, and the limits of human ambition. The world outside felt hostile and unpredictable. The world inside grew dense with ideas. One evening, Lord Byron proposed a challenge, almost casually, as if it were nothing more than a way to pass time. Each of them, he said, should write a ghost story. It sounded like entertainment, a diversion from boredom. But boredom is rarely empty. It is a space where the mind wanders without permission. While others struggled to summon something frightening, Mary struggled with something deeper. She carried grief already, having lost a child. She carried uncertainty, living in the shadow of famous thinkers. And she carried a question that haunted the age itself. What happens when humans push beyond natural boundaries in search of mastery, relief, control? The rain did not stop. Nights stretched long and restless. Sleep came unevenly. And in one such half-dreaming state, Mary saw an image that would not leave her. Not thunder, not lightning, not drama, but a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had assembled. A body brought together by intention, not nature. A creation born not of cruelty, but of ambition and curiosity. Frankenstein did not emerge as a scream, it emerged as a whisper, a quiet terror rooted in responsibility rather than violence. This matters because it reflects the same hidden tension we have followed since the medieval world. Humanity does not fear monsters, it fears what it creates when trying to ease suffering, overcome limits, or escape helplessness. Frankenstein was not written in a laboratory of spectacle. It was written in a room heavy with rain, silence, and inward pressure. And Mary Shelley herself was shaped the same way. Her life unfolded under the weight of loss, scrutiny, and solitude. Yet she continued. She wrote. She remembered. After her husband Percy Shelley drowned years later, grief did not announce itself loudly. It settled. Mary kept his heart, calcified and fragile, wrapped in one of his poems inside her writing desk, not as a spectacle, not as madness, but as continuity. Love preserved quietly, pain held close but controlled. This, too, is a kind of invention, a private solution to unbearable absence. As you listen now, let the rain soften in your imagination. Let the story slow your breathing. Remember that creativity is not always born from freedom. Sometimes it is born from confinement, from rooms we cannot leave, from seasons that do not arrive, from discomfort that lingers long enough to turn inward.
Mary Shelley did not create a monster because she wished to frighten the world. She created it because the world had become unfamiliar, and she needed a way to understand it. And that is where many of humanity's most lasting creations begin, not in triumph, but in quiet endurance.
Sleep did not come to her easily that summer. It hovered, approached, withdrew. The mind of Mary Shelley moved in circles, replaying conversations, half-formed ideas, and the quiet pressure of being young among legends. Outside, the rain persisted, a constant presence that erased time. Inside, the walls of Villa Diodati held every sound, every breath, every thought that could not escape. In this state between waking and rest, the imagination becomes porous. It absorbs fears that daylight keeps at bay. Mary did not sit down to invent a monster. The monster arrived on its own. In her half-dream, she saw not chaos, but intention. A man who wished to solve a problem, to conquer decay, to relieve death of its finality. The figure she saw was not a villain. He was careful, studious, driven by the same impulse that has guided humans across centuries, the desire to fix what hurts, to make existence more manageable, more controllable. This is the same impulse that once made medieval people distrust forks, buttons, and chairs, not because they were evil, but because they promised ease where hardship had meaning. Frankenstein, as an idea, is not about horror, it is about consequence. When Mary awoke, the image stayed. It followed her through the day, through conversation, through silence. It demanded to be written, not as entertainment, but as release. And when she finally gave it shape, she gave it restraint. Frankenstein does not celebrate creation, it questions it. The creature is not born violent. He becomes so through abandonment, through being left alone with a world that fears him. This distinction matters deeply. The terror in the story is not the act of making life easier, stronger, or different. It is the refusal to take responsibility for what that act unleashes. In this way, Mary's story echoes the hidden anxiety of every age that resists convenience. What if easing suffering weakens us? What if control invites disaster? What if the solutions we build escape our intentions? These questions linger softly in the novel, never shouted, never resolved. And they mirror Mary's own life. She lived with the consequences of love chosen against social approval. She lived with loss that no innovation could repair. Her writing did not offer comfort in the simple sense. It offered understanding, a place where fear could be examined without judgment. As you listen now, notice how the story slows the body. The rain becomes rhythmic. The fear becomes distant. Frankenstein endures not because it frightens, but because it recognizes a truth humans rarely admit. We create in order to survive discomfort, but survival always carries a cost. This is why the novel feels timeless. It is not tied to electricity or science. It is tied to the human instinct to push against limits. Mary Shelley captured that instinct in its quietest form, during a season when the world itself felt broken. And in doing so, she gave shape to a question that has never stopped asking itself. How far should we go to make life easier? And what are we willing to hold afterward?
Fame did not soften her life. If anything, it sharpened its edges. As the world began to recognize the power of Mary Shelley's creation, her private world grew increasingly fragile. She had chosen love outside convention, binding her life to Percy Bysshe Shelley, a poet of restless ideals and fierce sensitivity. Together, they lived in motion, drifting across countries, carrying manuscripts, debts, hopes, and griefs. Children were born and lost. Stability never arrived. And yet, within this instability, Mary learned endurance. She learned that creation did not end with writing. It continued in remembering, in surviving, in holding together a life that resisted comfort at every turn. When Percy drowned in 1822, the sea did not announce its cruelty. It simply closed over him. His body was later recovered and cremated on the shore according to custom. But something remained. His heart, hardened by illness, did not burn as the rest of him did. It was removed, wrapped carefully in a page of his poetry, and given to Mary. This detail has often been sensationalized, treated as morbid curiosity. But in the quiet rhythm of Mary's life, it was something else entirely. She did not display it. She did not speak of it loudly. She kept it in her writing desk, among papers and thoughts, where it could remain present without being seen. This was not madness. It was control, a private accommodation with grief. In a world that offered no reliable relief from loss, Mary fashioned her own, small and contained. The same instinct that once brought Frankenstein into being now guided her mourning. Pain, when held too openly, invites chaos. Pain, when held quietly, can be endured. This is where her life aligns again with the hidden pattern of history we have been following. Humanity resists comfort not because it enjoys suffering, but because comfort threatens to dissolve meaning. Mary did not seek to erase grief. She sought to live alongside it, to keep it close without letting it consume her. The heart in the drawer was not a refusal to let go. It was a boundary, a way of saying, this loss will not define every hour of my existence. As years passed, Mary returned again and again to memory. She edited Percy's works. She preserved his voice, even as her own grew steadier, quieter. She became a keeper of legacies rather than a seeker of novelty. This too mirrors the slow acceptance of comfort across centuries. What once felt forbidden becomes manageable when framed as care. The medieval world distrusted objects that eased the body. Mary's world distrusted emotions that overflowed. In both cases, relief had to be controlled, shaped, contained. Excess was feared, measure was respected. As you rest now, let this story settle like a soft weight. Love did not save Mary Shelley from loss. Creation did not protect her from sorrow, but both gave her structure, and structure allowed survival. The monster she imagined was never the true horror. The true horror was uncontained pain, and the quiet lesson of her life is this: relief does not always come from removing what hurts. Sometimes it comes from placing it gently where it can be borne. As your breathing slows, remember the heart kept silently in a drawer, not as a symbol of darkness, but of restraint, of love disciplined by endurance, of comfort found not in forgetting, but in choosing how to remember.
As the years moved forward, they did not bring spectacle. They brought quiet, the kind of quiet that settles after storms have passed, and there is nothing left to argue with. Mary Shelley lived on, not as the young woman trapped by rain beside a dark lake, but as a figure shaped by memory. She returned to England. She worked, she edited, she remembered. Frankenstein followed her everywhere, not as a burden, but as a companion she had learned to live beside. The world began to read the story differently than she had written it. Some saw a warning against science. Others saw rebellion. Some turned the creature into a spectacle, loud and violent, stripped of his loneliness. Mary watched this transformation with restraint. She rarely corrected it. She understood something that history often forgets. Once a creation enters the world, it no longer belongs to its maker. It belongs to those who need it. And people needed Frankenstein. They needed it during the Industrial Age, when machines grew powerful and human hands felt small. They needed it during wars, when invention outpaced compassion. They needed it whenever progress promised relief but delivered unease. Frankenstein became a mirror that could be lifted quietly without accusation, a way to ask dangerous questions without speaking them aloud. This is why the story endured, not because it frightened, but because it soothed a deeper anxiety. It gave shape to unease. It allowed fear to be examined at a distance. In this way, Frankenstein became what medieval objects once were before they were accepted, a solution approached cautiously, a comfort that came with warnings. Mary's later life was marked by the same careful balance. She did not seek attention. She did not chase novelty. She became a curator of meaning, preserving what mattered and letting the rest fade. Illness slowed her body. Reflection deepened her mind. When she died in 1851, there were no grand declarations, just papers, letters, and a story that refused to age. Tonight, as you rest, consider how Frankenstein functions now. It is no longer a book you read closely. It is an idea you recognize, a quiet signal that appears whenever humanity tries to solve pain too quickly, whenever comfort is engineered without care. Like the fork, the button, the chair, Frankenstein survived rejection because it addressed a need people could not name directly, the need to question ease, to ask whether relief always brings peace. Mary Shelley did not offer answers. She offered a place to rest with the question, and that is why her creation still works. It does not demand fear, it invites reflection. As your breathing slows, let this chapter settle. Mary Shelley's life teaches us that endurance is not loud, that survival does not always look like victory, and that some creations last not because they make life easier, but because they teach us how to carry difficulty without being consumed by it. The monster stayed, quietly, and so did the lesson. When the rain finally stopped, the world did not return to what it had been. It never does. Seasons resume, but memory lingers. For Mary Shelley, the year without a summer did not end when the clouds lifted. It settled into her life as a permanent weather, shaping how she saw comfort, creation, and consequence. She had learned early that relief is rarely pure, that every attempt to soften existence carries a shadow. And so she lived carefully, neither rejecting ease nor trusting it fully. This balance is what makes her story belong in a chapter about failed products that endure. Frankenstein was never meant to be a spectacle. It was a tool of understanding, a way to hold fear at arm's length and examine it without panic. Like the fork that separated fingers from food, like the button that eased the body into order, Frankenstein placed a boundary between humanity and its anxieties, not to erase them, but to manage them. Over time, the world used her creation again and again. Each era found its own reflection inside it. Industrial cities heard warnings about unchecked progress. Scientists heard questions about responsibility. Ordinary readers felt seen in the creature's loneliness. The story adapted without changing its core.
That is the mark of endurance. It does not insist, it waits. Mary Shelley understood waiting. Her later years were quiet, almost deliberately so. She watched ideas rise and fall, reputations flare and fade. She did not chase relevance, she trusted time. This trust mirrors the slow acceptance of convenience throughout history. Objects and ideas that last do not force themselves into the world. They offer relief in measured doses, allowing society to approach when ready. And when readiness arrives, it rarely announces itself. It feels like familiarity. Tonight, as your body relaxes, notice how familiar this story feels, even if you have never read it closely. That familiarity is its success. Frankenstein has become part of the mental furniture of modern life, a presence you lean against without noticing. And like all enduring comforts, it began as a response to confinement, to rain, to boredom, to a challenge spoken casually and taken seriously by a quiet mind. As we prepare to leave Mary Shelley behind for now, let her lesson remain with you. Comfort does not need to be trusted blindly to be useful. It needs to be shaped, respected, and kept in proportion. Relief, when approached gently, can coexist with meaning. The storm passes, the room remains, and in that room a story waits, patient and unchanged, ready whenever the world grows uneasy again. Let your breathing slow further. Let the quiet take hold. We will move soon into grand halls and hidden corridors, into places where beauty conceals history and comfort rests atop forgotten layers. But for now, rest with this thought. The most lasting inventions are not always those that make life easier. They are the ones that teach us how to sit with difficulty without being overwhelmed. And that lesson, like the monster Mary Shelley imagined, continues to live quietly among us.
Before the glass pyramid caught light, before the Mona Lisa learned how to smile at crowds, the Louvre was something else entirely. It was not a place of invitation, it was a place of refusal, a structure built to say no. No to invaders, no to chaos, no to the uncertainty that pressed against medieval cities like a constant shadow. To understand the Louvre, you must first let go of the idea of art. Let your mind step backward, away from polished floors and climate-controlled galleries, and into a Paris that did not yet trust peace. In the late 12th century, the city was vulnerable, its western edge exposed to enemies approaching along the river. Fear was practical then, it was a material, and from that material a fortress was shaped. Philippe Auguste ordered the construction of a massive stronghold, a stone answer to the anxiety of invasion. The Louvre rose as a defensive machine, thick walls, narrow passages, and at its heart a colossal keep known as the Grosse Tour. There were no paintings to admire here, only weapons, supplies, and silence. The purpose was clear: to intimidate, to endure, to keep danger at a distance. If you listen closely in your imagination, you can almost hear it. The echo of boots on cold stone, the slow rhythm of guards pacing their routes, the river Seine pressing against the walls, indifferent and persistent. This was a place designed to heighten alertness, not invite rest. And yet beneath the modern museum, those stones remain. You can still touch them today, deep below the galleries, where the temperature drops and the light softens. The base of the tower still holds the memory of vigilance. This survival is the Louvre's first quiet failure. It failed to remain a fortress. The threats it was built to face changed, dissolved, or moved elsewhere. Cannons made walls obsolete. Politics reshaped fear. The fortress outlived its function. But like the fork, the button, and the chair, It did not disappear, it waited. Over centuries, the building shifted identities, from fortress to palace, from palace to museum. Each transformation softened its original purpose. The walls that once kept people out began to gather them in. The corridors that funneled soldiers now guide visitors. What was once a machine of exclusion became a container for beauty. This is not a sudden redemption, it is a slow repurposing. The medieval world built structures to manage fear. The modern world walks through them seeking calm. That reversal is the hidden spine of this chapter. The Louvre did not succeed at terrifying the future, it succeeded at enduring it. And endurance, over time, invites reinterpretation. Tonight, as you let your breathing slow, imagine descending beneath the museum, away from paintings and whispers, down into the raw stone. Feel the coolness, the weight, the intention embedded in every block. This place remembers what it was, and yet it allows itself to be something else. That willingness to change is what transforms failure into legacy. A fortress that no longer frightens can become a refuge of thought. A place once shaped by suspicion can, centuries later, offer relief. And as we continue deeper into these hidden layers, remember this gentle truth. History rarely erases what no longer works. It keeps it, repurposes it, and lets time teach it a new role.
Go deeper now. Leave behind the brightness of galleries and the murmur of admiration. Descend into the lower levels, where the air grows cooler and heavier, where sound behaves differently. Here, beneath the modern floors of the Louvre, the base of the medieval tower still rests, unmoved by centuries of interpretation. This is the foundation of the Grosse Tour, the massive keep that once anchored the fortress. Its stones are thick, uneven, and patient. They were laid not for beauty, but for resistance. Each block carried a simple instruction: hold. Hold against pressure, hold against fear, hold against the unknown beyond the walls. In the 12th century, life inside these stones followed a rhythm shaped by vigilance. Guards paced narrow corridors, their footsteps measured, their days repetitive. They watched the river, they listened for signals, they waited. Waiting was the true labor of the fortress, not battle, but anticipation. The tower was designed to compress attention, to keep the mind alert, never fully at rest. Comfort had no role here. Privacy was minimal. Sweep was light. The architecture itself discouraged ease. Narrow openings, low light, echoing chambers, all reminding the body that safety required tension. This is how medieval power expressed care, not by soothing the population, but by containing danger. Fear was not hidden, it was managed, built into stone. Over time, however, the function of fear changed. Walls that once promised security began to feel confining. Advances in warfare rendered height and thickness less effective. Cannons ignored stone. Politics shifted borders faster than towers could respond. The Grosse Tour became excessive, a relic of an older anxiety. And so it was dismantled, not destroyed in anger, but removed with indifference, its stones reused, its presence absorbed into a growing palace. Yet its base remained, buried rather than erased. This is important. History often chooses not to forget. It layers. What you stand on matters, even when unseen. Today, visitors who descend to these remains do so slowly. Their voices lower, their steps soften. The stones still command attention, but not fear. They ask for quiet. In this reversal lies the heart of the Louvre's hidden past,
A space designed to keep enemies out now invites reflection inward. A foundation built for exclusion now supports inclusion. This transformation mirrors the fate of so many medieval solutions. Built for survival, judged later as unnecessary, they endure by changing purpose. The fortress failed to remain frightening. It succeeded in becoming grounding. As you imagine standing there now, feel the cool stone beneath your feet. Sense the weight above you, not oppressive but steady. The tower's base does not threaten collapse, it reassures. It says, "This has held before, it will hold again." Fear, when contained long enough, turns into memory. Memory, when respected, becomes calm. This is why people linger here, even when there is nothing to see. The absence is the presence. And in that presence, the body relaxes, the mind slows. The fortress has learned a new task. It no longer guards a city, it guards quiet.
Above the buried stones, another life began. Not abruptly, but by accumulation. Corridors widened. Light was invited in small, careful amounts. The fortress did not vanish, it was softened. As centuries passed, the space once organized around vigilance reorganized itself around display. Power discovered a new language. Where thick walls had once spoken of resistance, ornament now spoke of legitimacy. This transition from fortress to palace did not eliminate fear, it refined it. The medieval anxiety of invasion was replaced by the anxiety of appearance, of rank, of ritual. The building adapted by learning how to perform calm. Rooms were reshaped to host ceremonies, to guide movement, to control sightlines. The same impulse that once narrowed passages to slow intruders now broadened halls to choreograph subjects. Fear did not disappear, it changed costumes. The palace taught visitors how to behave before they realized they were being taught. Sound softened, steps slowed. Eyes were drawn upward to ceilings that suggested order and permanence. This was comfort as strategy, not ease for the body, but reassurance for the mind. The structure had failed to keep enemies forever at bay, but it succeeded in something more enduring, persuading people to feel safe in the presence of power. This persuasion required patience. It unfolded across reigns, renovations, and tastes. The building learned to absorb new meanings without shedding its foundations. Underneath ceremony, stone remained. Underneath beauty, weight persisted. That tension between what is shown and what is held back is the Louvre's quiet signature. It mirrors the broader human pattern we have been tracing. When tools built for survival lose relevance, they are not always discarded. They are aestheticized. The fork becomes etiquette. The button becomes fashion. The chair becomes status. The fortress becomes a palace. Each step makes fear less visible, but no less influential. As you imagine these rooms now, furnished and lit, remember what lies below. The base of the tower does not contradict the palace, it explains it. The calm you feel walking these halls is not accidental, it is constructed, carefully, over time. Tonight, allow that realization to relax you rather than alert you. Understanding how calm is built does not break it, it deepens it. The Louvre's hidden past teaches that comfort is often layered atop necessity, that beauty often rests on restraint, and that when fear learns to dress itself, it can become almost indistinguishable from peace.
Breathe slowly. Let the images blur gently. The palace stands not because it erased its origins, but because it learned to carry them quietly.
Another transformation came, quieter than the last. It did not arrive with drums or declarations. It arrived with footsteps, many footsteps. The palace, once designed to choreograph subjects before authority, learned a different rhythm. Power stepped back. Space leaned forward. The rooms that had hosted ceremony began to host presence. After revolutions and redefinitions, the building ceased to be a residence and became a repository. Art moved in not as decoration, but as memory. The Louvre learned to hold what nations wished to remember. This shift did not erase the past, it reframed it. The architecture that once directed obedience now guided attention. Light was softened to protect pigments. Silence became respectful rather than imposed. The old language of control evolved into a new language of care. Visitors entered not to be seen by power, but to see for themselves. This is a subtle but profound change. A fortress keeps watch. A palace performs legitimacy. A museum listens. In listening, it slows those who pass through. It asks for patience. It rewards looking twice. Beneath the glass pyramid and beyond the masterpieces, the medieval stones continued their work, unnoticed but essential. They supported the floors, the crowds, the accumulated weight of culture. The base of the tower did not object to this new role. It had learned endurance. Fear, once sharpened into vigilance, had been worn down into stability. Stability, when shared, becomes trust. As you imagine walking these halls at night, empty and dim, consider how the building now offers relief without promising safety. It does not pretend danger never existed. It acknowledges it by preserving layers. This is the Louvre's final lesson in this chapter. Failed purposes are not always removed. They are transformed into foundations. What once kept people out now holds people up. What once narrowed movement now expands thought. The building's openness is not naive, it is earned. Through centuries of adaptation, through the acceptance that control cannot be permanent. Tonight, let that acceptance ease you. Let your breath find a slower pace. The museum rests because it no longer needs to defend itself, and in that rest, it invites you to rest as well.
When the last visitors leave and the lights dim, the building exhales. The Louvre rests in a way only old structures can, not by forgetting what it was, but by settling into everything it has become. Above, galleries sleep beneath vaulted ceilings. Below, stone remembers. The base of the tower does not speak, yet it continues to do its quiet work, holding weight, absorbing time, and reminding the present that it stands on intention. This is the final transformation of the fortress, not into something new, but into something steady. What once demanded alertness now invites reflection. What once narrowed movement now allows the mind to wander. The hidden past remains hidden not because it is shameful, but because it is complete. It has nothing left to prove. In this completeness lies comfort, a comfort that does not deny fear, but places it where it can no longer command attention. The Louvre teaches us that endurance is a form of mercy. Structures that last do so by changing their relationship to anxiety. They learn when to resist and when to receive. Tonight, let that lesson ease you. Imagine the building breathing slowly, each layer aligned, each era at rest.
stone beneath glass, silence beneath admiration, memory beneath beauty. This alignment is not accidental. It is the result of centuries of adaptation, of accepting that protection can become prison if held too tightly, and that openness can be safe when supported properly. As we prepare to move on, notice how the chapter closes without finality. The fortress did not end, it softened. The palace did not disappear, it opened. The museum did not conquer the past, it listened to it. And in listening, it learned how to hold people gently. Let your breathing slow with this thought. Comfort does not always come from removing barriers. Sometimes it comes from understanding why they were built and choosing not to need them anymore. The stones remain, the fear fades, the quiet stays. And with that quiet, we turn toward a new material, one that promises visibility instead of defense, transparency instead of thickness. From stone to glass, from weight to light, we will continue carrying the same question forward. What do humans build when fear loosens its grip?
It begins not with intention, but with rest. A fire burns low on a shoreline as night settles in. Waves arrive and withdraw with steady patience. The people gathered there do not seek invention. They seek warmth, light, and time to slow. And yet, when the embers cool and morning returns, something unfamiliar remains where sand once lay. Smooth, hardened, clear. The earliest glass was not a triumph announced to the world. It was an interruption, a material that behaved unlike anything before it. Solid yet transparent, born of sand yet refusing to stay opaque. In ancient societies, this contradiction was unsettling. Stone hid what lay behind it, metal reflected without revealing. Glass allowed light to pass through while remaining present. It did not protect by blocking, it protected by separating without erasing sight. This was new, and like every new way of seeing, it was approached with caution. The early history of glass is filled with small uses and careful boundaries. Beads, vessels, decorative inlays. It took centuries before glass was trusted enough to become windows, before humans allowed their walls to be pierced by clarity. This hesitation is the same pattern we have followed throughout the night. When convenience promises too much, when it suggests a world less guarded, fear tightens. What if transparency invites vulnerability? What if seeing more makes us weaker? The Romans understood this tension well. They mastered glassmaking, refined it, spread it across the empire. Yet even they held back from its most radical possibilities. The legend of flexible glass, vitrum flexile, captures this restraint perfectly. According to ancient accounts, a craftsman presented a glass vessel that bent instead of shattering to the Emperor Tiberius. The demonstration was flawless. The promise was immense. A material that could replace precious metals, that could endure accidents, that could change economies. And that was precisely the problem. The emperor did not fear the object, he feared the shift it represented. Gold and silver held value because they were scarce and fragile. A substance that rivaled them without breaking threatened the structure beneath society. So the story ends not with adoption, but with silence. The craftsman is removed, the knowledge disappears. Whether the tale is true matters less than why it persisted. It reveals an ancient instinct to restrain inventions that offered too much relief too quickly. Glass, in its clarity, asks us to trust what we see. Trust, for much of history, was rationed carefully. As you listen now, let the image of sand melting into transparency slow your thoughts.
Glass does not conquer darkness, it coexists with it. It allows light to enter without pretending night has ended. That balance is why it eventually endured, not because it eliminated fear, but because it taught fear how to soften. Tonight, we begin the final chapter by standing at the edge of that first fire, watching a material quietly wait for humanity to be ready to look through it.
For a long time, glass remained an accessory rather than an invitation. In the Roman world, it adorned vessels, mosaics, and small luxuries meant to be admired at close range. Walls still ruled. Stone defined safety. Privacy was built by thickness. And yet, slowly, almost reluctantly, glass began to migrate upward toward openings, not large at first, narrow panes set high, cautious apertures that admitted light while guarding the body. This shift marked a quiet negotiation between fear and curiosity. Romans valued order, clarity, and control. They paved roads straight and measured, drained swamps, and mapped cities with intention. But when it came to letting the outside look in, they hesitated. A window was a compromise. It gives without surrendering. It reveals without yielding. Glass made that compromise possible. In villas along the coast and in towns preserved by accident, like Pompeii, archaeologists later found traces of early window glass, cloudy, imperfect, yet revolutionary. Rooms brightened. Time of day became visible indoors. Weather could be watched without being endured. This altered daily rhythm. Light softened interiors. Shadows shortened. The body relaxed. Still, the adoption was uneven. Glass was fragile, expensive, and uncertain. A broken pane invited wind and eyes. Transparency demanded trust, and trust, as history teaches, grows slowly. The Roman solution was moderation. Windows remained partial. Curtains and shutters accompanied glass. The message was clear. See, but selectively. This measured acceptance mirrors every earlier pattern we've traced. Innovations that promise relief are rarely welcomed fully. They are introduced at the edges, tested, limited. Glass did not overthrow walls, it partnered with them. Over centuries, this partnership reshaped architecture. Homes learned to breathe light. Public buildings learned to frame views. The act of seeing became gentler, and with gentleness came a new kind of calm. As you imagine standing in such a room, notice how light rests without demanding attention. It does not announce itself, it simply arrives. This arrival is the success glass waited for. Not dominance, but permission. Not spectacle, but use. Tonight, let that image slow you. Walls no longer press inward, they hold. Light enters quietly, changing nothing and everything at once. This is how inventions endure, by learning when to be visible and when to disappear.
The story arrives softly, almost as a whisper carried across centuries. A craftsman steps forward, not with arrogance, but with confidence earned through patience. In his hands rests a vessel of glass, smooth and clear, shaped by fire and time. He stands before Tiberius, an emperor known not for curiosity, but for caution. The room is quiet. Marble reflects light without warmth. The craftsman lets the bowl fall. It strikes the floor and does not shatter. Instead, it bends, yielding like metal, denting rather than breaking. A hammer restores its shape. The demonstration is complete. What follows is not wonder, but calculation. The emperor asks a single question: whether anyone else knows the method.
When the answer is no, the outcome is sealed. The craftsman is removed. The knowledge vanishes. This legend of Vitrum Flexilla endures not because it proves ancient technology exceeded our own, but because it exposes a deep human reflex. A material that does not break removes a familiar boundary. Fragility creates value. Risk creates meaning. Gold is precious because it can be stolen. Glass is manageable because it can shatter. A substance that refuses to fail threatens the delicate balance between abundance and worth. The Roman response was extreme, yet revealing. They did not fear the object itself, they feared the consequences of its success. An unbreakable material could disrupt trade, undermine wealth, and blur social distinctions. Too much relief delivered too quickly destabilizes systems built on scarcity. Throughout history, this pattern repeats. Innovations that promise to erase vulnerability are treated with suspicion. They are delayed, hidden, or mythologized into cautionary tales. Vitrum Flexilla became one such tale. Whether true or not, it taught restraint. It warned that transparency and durability together could be dangerous. Glass in this moment was asked to remain imperfect, to crack, to fail, because failure preserved order. As you listen now, notice how this fear mirrors earlier chapters. Forks threatened humility, buttons threatened discipline, chairs threatened equality, fortresses threatened to become obsolete. Glass that would not break threatened economics itself. Each time, society chose hesitation over haste. Tonight, let this realization settle. Not every lost invention is an accident. Some are sacrifices, chosen limits that allow continuity. Glass survived by accepting fragility. It became useful by being breakable. And in that acceptance, it found endurance. The story of Vitrum Flexilla does not end with execution. It ends with understanding. That survival often requires restraint. That clarity must arrive gradually. And that sometimes the most dangerous thing is not darkness, but seeing too much too soon. Breathe slowly. Let the bowl fall again in your mind. Hear the dull sound. Feel the pause. And rest in the knowledge that what endures does so by learning when not to exist.
After the legend faded, glass did not vanish. It waited. It accepted its limits. It remained fragile, imperfect, and therefore acceptable. Over centuries, this quiet compromise allowed it to spread, not as a threat, but as a companion. Windows multiplied slowly. Monasteries welcomed light for reading. Workshops learned to work longer days. Cities brightened without fully opening themselves. Glass did not force exposure, it negotiated it. This negotiation reshaped how humans experienced space. Rooms grew lighter, but not exposed. Streets could be observed without being entered. Weather could be watched without being suffered. This distance mattered. It preserved safety while allowing awareness. In this way, glass became a tool not of dominance, but of mediation. It stood between inside and outside, between fear and curiosity. Medieval people did not suddenly trust transparency. They learned to tolerate it. And tolerance, repeated over generations, became familiarity. Familiarity softened resistance. By the late medieval period, glass was no longer a novelty. It was still expensive, still imperfect, still uneven, but it was understood. The surface rippled, distorted, reminded viewers that clarity was never absolute. And that reminder was comforting. Perfect vision would have been unsettling. Slight distortion made transparency human. This imperfect seeing became a metaphor for knowledge itself. You could look through, but never fully grasp. You could observe, but not control. Glass taught restraint by design. As the material spread, it quietly changed architecture, behavior, and even thought. Privacy evolved. People learned to be seen without being exposed, to let light enter without surrendering the self. This balance echoes every earlier chapter we have explored tonight. The fork did not remove touch, it refined it. The button did not erase effort, it ordered it. The chair did not abolish hierarchy, it redistributed comfort. The fortress did not disappear, it transformed. And glass did not erase fear, it reframed it. Transparency became a skill rather than a state, something practiced, adjusted, and maintained. Tonight, as you listen, let that idea settle gently. Living with transparency does not require bravery all at once. It requires patience. Glass survived because it respected human limits. It waited for trust to grow. It allowed people to decide how much to reveal. In doing so, it became one of the most enduring materials in history, not because it was strong, but because it was forgiving. As your breathing slows, imagine light passing through an old window, uneven and soft. It does not flood the room, it rests. It does not demand, it accompanies. This is the quiet success of glass, and this is why it belongs at the end of our journey. When fear loosens its grip, humans do not rush into clarity. They approach it gently through something fragile, something that can break, something that teaches care. Glass did not conquer the world. It taught the world how to see without fear.
Now the night draws closer to stillness. The stories begin to overlap not as separate chapters, but as a single rhythm. A fork resting beside a plate, a button holding fabric together, a chair supporting a tired body, a fortress softened into a museum, a pane of glass quietly holding the world at a distance. None of these objects announced their triumph. None of them arrived with celebration. They endured by waiting, by remaining imperfect, by allowing fear to dissolve slowly rather than confronting it directly. This is the hidden pattern beneath everything you have heard tonight. Humanity does not embrace comfort eagerly. It tests it, distrusts it, rejects it, and only later, when danger fades into habit, does comfort become invisible. The medieval world believed hardship shaped virtue. Ease was suspicious. Convenience felt like moral decay. Yet over centuries, people discovered something quieter and more enduring, that survival does not require constant strain, that tools which soften life do not weaken it, they make room for rest, and rest, when protected, becomes strength. Each object in tonight's journey was once accused of excess. Forks were called unnatural, buttons were dismissed as lazy, chairs were seen as indulgent, fortresses were feared as obsolete, glass was dangerous because it revealed too much. But time eroded these accusations, not through argument, through repetition, through nightly use, through generations growing up without remembering the fear. Eventually, convenience stopped being noticed. It became background, like breathing, like warmth, like sleep. This is the quiet victory of imperfect things. They do not demand belief, they ask only patience, and patience reshapes values more effectively than force. As you lie here now, supported by objects that once would have been condemned, notice how little effort they require from you. The chair does not ask permission,
The glass does not insist on clarity. The button does not argue its worth. They simply do their work and recede. That is their triumph. History often remembers battles and speeches. It rarely remembers the moment when resistance quietly ended, when suspicions softened, when people stopped arguing and started resting. Yet that moment is happening all the time. It is happening now, as your breath slows, as the world grows quieter, as the need to resist fades. Medieval people feared that comfort would make life meaningless, but meaning did not disappear. It shifted from endurance to reflection, from survival to understanding, from noise to quiet awareness. The objects around you tonight are descendants of that shift. They are evidence that humanity learned slowly that rest is not surrender, it is recovery, and recovery allows life to continue. Let this realization settle like dust after movement. Nothing more needs to be proven. Nothing more needs to be feared. The night does not ask you to struggle. It invites you to soften, to trust what holds you, to allow imperfect things to do their quiet work. And as sleep approaches, remember this final truth hidden beneath all 4 chapters. Progress rarely arrives loudly. It survives by becoming ordinary, by blending into the background, by waiting until fear grows tired. And when it does, comfort remains, steady, silent, and enough.